Are you still laughing, kid? While the flag rope clicks against the pole outside. They mocked the old man's faded ink, a ripple of blue that once meant brotherhood, then went silent as his sleeve rolled down. The light shifted. A heartbeat filled the room, and that same tattoo caught the sun like proof memory pressed into skin duty, etched in quiet blue. Still no speech followed. Only the echo of chairs, the shine on the floor, and a steady voice whispering, "Quiet men leave echoes too." The Port Marin training hall smelled of floor wax and metal polish. Rows of folding chairs lined the waxed concrete, each creaking as young recruits settled in. It was Veterans Week 2023, and the morning light came through the high windows, striping the room in gold. Chalk dust floated in the air like slow snow. At the far end, Cal Donovan stood among them, gray at the temples, shoulders straight, hands clasped behind his back. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow, the edge of an old tattoo visible on his forearm, an anchor surrounded by faded blue script. Someone in the second row whispered loud enough to travel. "Guess the old man's running on ink and coffee." Laughter broke across the row, quick and sharp. Another recruit added, "That mark used to mean something." Cal didn't flinch. He looked at the flag near the stage, its edge stirring in the air vent's current. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the calm of gravel roads and late-night radios. "Still," he said, "you just forgot the language." The laughter thinned. A few recruits shifted in their seats, unsure whether to smile or stare forward. A drill instructor clapped hands once, eyes front. The room snapped to silence, but the words hung there like echo smoke. "You just forgot the language." Cal rolled his sleeve down. The overhead fluorescence flickered, reflecting the flag's red stripe across his arm before it disappeared under fabric. He felt the old ache in his shoulder from a place half the room had never heard of. He'd carried that ache longer than most of these kids had been alive. Funny how pain ages slower than pride, he thought. Still, he stayed in line. Didn't correct them, didn't need to. His quiet was sharper than a reprimand. Minutes stretched as the instructor ran through safety drills. Metal chairs squeaked. Someone coughed. The heat hummed from vents high above. Cal's eyes traced the chalk marks on the floor where hundreds of boots had stood over the years. Ghost footprints teaching discipline. A young recruit beside him leaned in whispering, "Sir, were you really Navy?" Once Cal answered, "Long time ago." What's the ink for Cal gave a faint smile. Reminders of what service costs and what it gives back. The recruit nodded, half understanding, half embarrassed. "Didn't mean any disrespect earlier." "I know," Cal said gently. "Someday you'll earn your own mark. Just make sure it still means something when the colors fade." The instructor called for formation practice. Boots, shuffled chairs scraped the hall, filled with motion. As Cal stepped forward, the light caught the edge of his rolled sleeve again. The tattoo glimmered briefly under the fluorescence, like a ripple of blue water caught in metal. For a moment, the chatter quieted, maybe out of respect. Maybe because no one wanted to be the next to shake. He straightened eyes on the flag. In that reflection, he saw both past and present, folded together young faces, chasing the same ideal that once carried him across oceans. No applause, no speech. Just the quiet resolve of a man who'd been underestimated before and learned how to let silence answer. The flag's reflection danced across the polished floor. Cal breathed in, slow and steady. The moment passed, but something in the air had shifted. Minnie Cliff, shh. 30-120. Guess the old man's running on ink and coffee. Viral pull quote, still does, he said. You just forgot the language. Silent beat. He rolls his sleeve down as flag reflections dance on the floor. The rain had been steady since dawn, soft enough to blur the view of the harbor outside the diner's fogged windows. The place smelled of bacon grease and dark roast. A flag decal rippled faintly on the coffee mug in front of Cal Donovan, its reflection bending with each quiet swirl of the spoon. He sat alone in his usual corner booth, the one facing both the door and the dock. Steam drifted from the mug, curling into the chill morning air. Across the counter, the waitress filled cups in a rhythm as sure as the tide. Cal traced the rim of his cup with a thumb, thinking how mornings like this had always made him feel halfway between memory and shore leave. The bell above the door jingled. Evan Cole, the young recruit from the training hall, stood hesitating at the entrance. His uniform still too crisp, his nervousness easy to read. He spotted Cal and approached, trying to hide uncertainty behind a smile. "Mind if I sit?" Evan asked. Cal nodded toward the empty seat. "You already made it this far, son. Might as well." The younger man slid into the booth, the vinyl squeaking. He looked down at the table at the photograph laid beside Cal's coffee. The photo showed a group of sailors, younger versions of men who'd long since gone gray, or gone quiet altogether. Near the center, an arm bore the same anchor tattoo Cal still carried. "That's the mark," Evan said softly. "From Bootcamp yesterday. The one the one." Cal waved him off with a calm hand. "No harm done. I was green once, too. Thought jokes made me belong." Evan looked out the window. The rain traced thin silver lines down the glass. "It just looked old, faded. Guess the mug got older with me," Cal said with a small grin. The humor broke the tension. The waitress appeared with a refill pot, tilting it with practiced ease. "Top you off, gentlemen, sure," Cal said. "Rain calls for seconds." When she moved away, the older man tapped the edge of the photograph. "These men here, they all wore the same ink. Same mark, different stories. It wasn't about the lines or the color. It was about remembering who stood beside you when it mattered." Evan studied the image. "Do you ever regret it?" The mark Cal's eyes stayed on the photo. Marks fade, choices don't. Every day you decide who you'll be when no one's watching. That's what sticks. Still, he didn't answer directly, letting the rain fill the space between them. The jukebox hummed low, an old country tune half swallowed by the sound of droplets on the awning. Outside, gulls circled the dock, calling over the hush of the bay. Evan finally said, "They'll respect you now, after what you said yesterday." Cal shook his head. Respect earned loud usually doesn't last. The kind that counts. It happens in silence. He sipped the coffee, its warmth grounding him. The boy's reflection in the window overlapped with his own, one beginning, one remembering. "Thanks for the coffee, sir," Evan said as he rose. "Keep the receipt," Cal replied. "Someday you'll buy the next round." The doorbell chimed again as the recruit stepped into the drizzle. Cal watched him go, the rain making small halos on the pavement outside. He turned the photograph over, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. Beneath it, the coffee's surface mirrored the diner's small flag bar, rippling with each drop against the window. Still, he didn't answer directly. Some lessons were meant to steep, not spill. By noon, the rain had passed, leaving the town washed and bright. The Port Marin Library stood at the corner of Main, its steps slick with leftover drizzle. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and lemon polish. Ceiling fans hummed overhead, pushing lazy circles through the light. Dust motes drifted in the sunbeams, like quiet confetti. Evan Cole pushed open the heavy door, still thinking about the conversation at the diner. He'd slept little, turning Cal Donovan's words over in his mind. Marks fade, choices don't. The phrase had stuck like a song you can't shake. Behind the counter, Mrs. Daly, the town librarian, looked up from her desk. Her reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. "Afternoon recruit? You look like someone hunting ghosts." Maybe Evan said, "I'm looking for records on the Port Marin Training Division, something from the early 80s. A unit photo, maybe?" She studied him for a moment, then nodded toward the back room. "Archives open. Third cabinet from the end. Bring the patience God gave you." He smiled faintly and followed her gesture. The archive smelled of cardboard and time. Shelves groaned under binders, each labeled in fading ink. He flipped through one, then another, the hum of the ceiling fan marking the silence. A folder slipped loose, scattering photographs across the table. He gathered them carefully and froze. One picture showed a lineup of sailors in front of a gray hangar. On one man's arm glinted the faint outline of a tattoo anchor in blue script, the same as Cal's. "Old photo," he whispered. "Same mark." He turned it over. The date, May 1983. A name written in neat handwriting, Lieutenant Cal Donovan, Port Marin Unit. "Mrs. Daly," he called softly. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Find something?" He held out the picture. "Do you remember this unit?" Her eyes softened. "Oh, yes. That was the year the commander visited the SEAL instructor, Holt. Caused quite a stir back then. Signed the town ledger himself." Evan blinked. "Commander Holt was there too." "Mm-hmm." She moved to a nearby shelf, pulling a thick logbook bound in navy cloth. The pages whispered as she opened it. "There it is," she said, pointing. Recognition record veterans honored for service and discipline. Cal Donovan, top of the list. The ceiling fan spun slower, stirring the edges of old paper. Evan traced the printed ink with a finger reverent now. The same anchor mark appeared in the margins, hand-drawn beside a note, "Proof of service acknowledged." He felt a strange mix of awe and shame. Yesterday's jokes echoed in his head, small and brittle now. Mrs. Daly adjusted her glasses. "That man's kept this town's respect longer than most, remember. He just never asked for it." Evan nodded, still staring at the faded ink. He didn't have to. A draft from the fan lifted the corner of the photo. Pages fluttered softly like breath. The light caught the silver frame of a nearby portrait, reflecting a thin gleam onto the logbook cover. Evan slipped the photo and logbook entry into a protective sleeve. "He should see this," he said quietly. "Then bring it to him," the librarian replied. "Sometimes history needs someone young to carry it forward." He looked out through the tall windows. The clouds were breaking apart over the bay, the sunlight clear and forgiving. The fan hummed, the pages settled, and for a moment the whole room seemed to hold its breath. The town hall was dressed in bunting and light. Rows of folding chairs filled the floor, the scent of polished wood and fresh paint mingling with cologne and old uniforms. From behind the curtain, Cal Donovan could hear the faint hum of the church choir warming up. The microphone crackled, then steadied to a quiet buzz. He hadn't planned to be here. Evan Cole had asked, "Just come, sir. There's something you should see." Now Cal stood at the back of the hall, the light from the stage cutting a line across his shoes. The mayor droned through introductions, names echoing in a polite rhythm. Cal's attention drifted to the veterans seated near the front, gray heads, straight backs, eyes that knew distance. The flag beside the podium hung motionless, waiting. Evan moved quietly between rows, handing programs to attendees. When he reached Cal, he pressed a small patch into his hand. It bore the same anchor and script as his faded tattoo, restored, embroidered in navy and gold thread. "Found it in the archives," Evan whispered. "Thought it belonged with you." Cal turned the patch over thumb, brushing the threadwork. For a moment the lights dimmed, and he could almost feel the heat of old days, the fire of service that had never truly gone out. From the stage, the announcer's voice lifted. And now a special recognition for one of our own retired Lieutenant Cal Donovan. A murmur moved through the crowd. Cal froze. Evan gestured toward the aisle, urging him forward. The choir began a low harmony that trembled in the rafters. He stepped slowly into the light. The audience rose like a wave of applause rolling through the room. Commander Holt, older but unmistakable, waited at the podium, medals glinting under the spotlights. "Didn't expect to see you here," Cal Holt said with a grin. "Didn't expect to be here, sir." The commander held up the same patch Evan had returned to him, now pinned on a velvet square. "This marks not decoration. It's a promise kept." He turned to the audience. "You carried the team through hell quietly. That's the kind of fire we talk about when we say service." The crowd stilled. Even the men who had mocked in training hall seats straightened, hands hovering over their hearts. One by one they raised their palms in salute. The sound of applause swelled again, deeper this time. Holt stepped forward and pinned the patch on Cal's chest. No ceremony could have felt heavier or kinder. Protocol pinned him in place, someone whispered from the side, but this time the phrase meant something new. It was not restraint, but recognition. Cal's hand shook slightly. The camera light blinked red. The shot would later play across local feeds, silent but strong. He wanted to speak, but words felt smaller than the moment. The halls shimmered with motion flags, trembling light glancing off polished brass. Finally, he found a breath. "I just did my part," he said. Holt nodded. "You reminded us what parts still matter." The ovation rose again, not forced, but genuine. The choir's harmony lifted, beneath it a quiet wave, carrying warmth through every seat. For a heartbeat, Cal saw the faces of men long gone laughing, working standing shoulder to shoulder. Then the light softened. His gaze found Evan near the edge of the stage, standing tall, his expression unguarded, proud. The air felt charged but peaceful. The outrage of old misunderstanding burned clean into justice. The camera lingered as Cal's hand trembled once more, then steadied, resting over the patch that gleamed like a kept vow. Music swelled, then faded under. By late afternoon, Port Marin's Main Street shimmered in sunlight. The rain-washed air smelled of paint, coffee, and new beginnings. A scaffold stretched across the diner wall where volunteers brushed color onto fresh primer. Music from a nearby speaker floated between hammer taps and laughter. Cal Donovan stood near the curb, coffee in one hand, watching as the mural took shape. The design was simple anchors, boots emblems of service, and in the center, a faint outline of a tattooed arm brush-stroked in blue. Evan balanced on a ladder, his sleeve rolled up, smearing paint with the confidence of someone who'd found purpose. "They said I couldn't draw a straight line," he called down. "Now it's 3 feet tall." Cal smiled. "Keep at it. The crooked ones have more heart." The townspeople moved like clockwork kids, carrying paint cans, older veterans, handing out lemonade. The rhythm of brushes and laughter mingled with a low hum from the church choir rehearsing nearby. Then Mayor Granger approached, hat in hand, posture uncertain. His voice came softer than usual. "You know how folks talk, Cal. I was just keeping things proper." Cal took a slow sip of coffee, letting the words hang. The line landed like a familiar weight, the kind of pressure that used to push him silent. "That's all right, Mayor," he said evenly. "Some rules sound better when they finally meet daylight." Granger nodded, eyes dropping. "Never meant harm. Town just follows habit." Cal tilted his cup toward the mural. Habits change faster when people start painting over them. The mayor gave a thin smile and joined a group fetching extra brushes. Evan climbed down the ladder, wiping sweat with the back of his arm. "Looks better than I expected," he said. "That's because it's honest," Cal replied. "And honesty always dries brighter." The two men stood back as sunlight hit the wet paint, making the anchor gleam. A passing veteran pointed at the plaque leaning against the diner window. "You gonna set that one today?" Cal nodded. The brass plaque read, "Marks of Service Port Marin. Thanks, its quiet heroes." He carried it to the wall, the edges cool in his hands. Evan crouched beside him, with a drill aligning the corners. When the final screw tightened, a light breeze lifted the flag nearby. The reflection caught on the plaque's surface, throwing gold across their faces. The choir's song from the open church doors spilled down the street, merging with the sound of laughter. For a brief moment, Cal closed his eyes. The weight of years seemed to lighten. He could feel every hand that had built this, paint-stained, calloused, unsteady, but determined. Someone passed him a second mug of coffee. "Refill, sir," he chuckled. "At this rate, I'll be painted right into the mural." They laughed, and the sound rolled through the afternoon clean and easy. He looked at Evan, who was already sketching the next section. "Keep the lines simple," Cal said. "People remember what they can feel." The boy grinned, sunlight cutting across his hair. The mural shimmered wet paint, warm colors shared pride. The choir voices blended with the chatter of the street. Coffee cups clinked against ladders. Brushes glinted like metal under the sun. Cal took a slow breath, content. The town had spoken louder with paint than words ever could. The sun was lowering behind the trees when Evan Cole walked up the narrow path to Cal Donovan's porch. The air smelled of pine and sea salt drifting from the bay. Wind chimes clinked softly under the eaves, marking the slow rhythm of evening. Cal sat on the porch swing, its chains creaking with each gentle sway. The light touched the edge of his face, painting gold along the lines time had etched. A small frame rested beside him on the wooden table, the sketch of the mural, signed at the bottom in Evan's handwriting. Beneath the drawing, the words, "Marks of Service," shimmered faintly in pencil. "You showed up," Cal said without turning. "Yes, sir," Evan replied. "Bus leaves at dawn. Thought I'd say goodbye first." Cal nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. Sunset's the right time for goodbyes. Day's done, but light still lingers. Evan smiled, easing down onto the swing beside him. The boards creaked again. "Town looks different now." "It's the same," Cal said. "Just seen clearer." They sat in quiet a while. The memorial wall in the distance caught the last orange of the sun, the engraved names glowing faintly as if lit from within. Evan picked up the framed sketch. They mocked that ink once. Cal looked at him, a slow grin spreading beneath his gray mustache. "Yeah. But it marked who we were." The words settled between them, heavy but warm. He reached out, adjusting the frame so the glass caught the reflection of the flag fluttering at the end of the driveway. "Funny thing about marks," Cal said. "You think they fade, but they don't. They just move from skin to memory, from one pair of hands to another." Evan nodded, his voice quiet. "I'll carry it with me. The meaning, I mean." "That's the only part worth carrying," Cal replied. The swing rocked slowly. Evening wind brushed through the porch, carrying the faint smell of paint still drying downtown. Somewhere far off, the church choir rehearsed for Sunday voices, blending with the soft rasp of cicadas in the field. Evan glanced toward the wall again. "You ever miss it, sir?" The service Cal's eyes followed the same line of sight. "I miss the sound of belonging. But I learned it doesn't vanish, it just changes key." He lifted his coffee mug, half empty and cooling. Now it sounds like this porch, like folks remembering the right way. Evan leaned back, letting the swing drift. I'll make sure they remember too. Cal's expression softened. You already did. The last light stretched across the porch boards, amber turning to blue. Evan rose, placing the framed sketch back on the table. I'll send a letter when I can, he said. Don't bother with perfect words, Cal told him. Just tell the truth. They shook hands, firm but unhurried. The swing creaked once more as Cal watched him go down the path, duffel over his shoulder. The breeze lifted again, stirring the flag near the fence. Its reflection glowed faintly on the frame's glass ink and light side by side. Cal leaned back. Eyes half closed, the porch swing finding its slow rhythm again. He smiled to himself, quiet and steady. The day dimmed, but the promise stayed bright. The porch was quiet except for the swing's slow creak and the faraway hum of the choir down the hill. Cal sat with the framed sketch on his lap, the sunset glowing through the glass, until the words, marks of service, shimmered like a medal. The air smelled of coffee and salt. The flag at the fence lifted once, as if nodding to what was left unsaid. Kindness, he thought, wasn't a parade, it was the habit of staying when no one's watching. It was a lamp in a winter window, steady enough for the next traveler to find his way. Still, the porch light clicked on behind him, a small proof that legacy could be quiet and bright all at once. Down the road, fresh paint on the diner wall caught the last gold of evening, the same mark, the same promise. If this story moved you, share it forward.